Hello, I'm Brian Lewis, and this is my assignment for Nursing 602 on backward instructional design. Backward instructional design does not focus on remembering facts, but rather fosters an enduring understanding of the material. Focuses on desired outcomes, student learning outcomes. Wiggins and McTighe termed this concept understanding by design in a book by the same name. Instruction is developed in reverse of traditional design, using three distinct steps. First, you identify your results. Then you analyze sources of data. Then you determine appropriate action plans for the instruction. Step 1 is to identify your desired results. What should the students understand or be able to do by the end of the module or course? These are also known as student learning outcomes. This is different from learning knowledge, which can be gathered by reading but has little to do with practical usefulness. Knowledge does not equal proficiency. Step number 2 in the process is analyzing sources of data. What is acceptable evidence that the student understands or comprehends the information that's been taught? Will it be a paper, multimedia assignment? Multiple choice quizzes are rarely used because they tend to only show retention of information, not that they truly comprehend and will be able to use it. An appropriate assessment must be defined. Assessment should be an ongoing process instead of a one-time assessment. This is really the area where the instructor decides what an acceptable level of proficiency is, generally by creating and using a rubric for fairness. Step number 3 in the process is determining appropriate action plans. Once the first 2 steps are complete, you can determine activities or lesson plans, materials, and resources to allow students to be able to accomplish these goals. What activities will help to equip the students with knowledge and skills that they need to reach the goal or the big concept? This must be engaging and effective for all students. In the end, students must possess the ability to transfer the content they have learned to different situations. Learners will historically be more engaged with the content when it's presented in this manner. Competent and productive learners are the goal of this step. Students will ask more thoughtful questions about content as they become high performers. Here we'll look at some design comparisons. In traditional education design, first we set a goal. For example, the goal may be for 80% of students to understand a single concept. As instructors, the next step is to teach towards the goal. Lastly, the student is tested for their understanding of the concept. We've talked about backward concept design, so let's have a look at a real example. The real-world example is trying to teach the Krebs cycle. As we all remember, the Krebs cycle is a series of chemical reactions that form ATP or adenosine triphosphate that's taught in many biology classes. I can recall 4 university classes that covered this concept, and every single one used a traditional design. The professor would teach it. We would memorize the starting products and eventually work our way around the circle until we had an idea how ATP was formed. Instructors often want us to memorize how many ATP, CO2, and other products were formed as a result. A test would challenge us to figure out how many ATP, CO2, etc. were formed based on the number of beginning products. For example, if you start with X number of molecules, list how many ATP, CO2, and NADP would be generated from that. However, if teaching the Krebs cycle is to be backward design, that instruction might look a little different. The big idea or concept is for students to understand the role or function of the Krebs cycle. An assessment in a standard class might include a visual presentation by the student or a group of students explaining the setup and energy harvest phases of the cycle. The student might then be asked to give an example of a deficiency that might affect the functioning of the Krebs cycle and explain how or why this happens. These are the references that I used for my assignment on backwards instructional design.